The HOA president fined me for my trash can. So I made him tear down his $10,000 fence. The paper crinkled under my thumb because I was gripping it so hard my knuckles had turned a translucent, skeletal white. I wasn't just reading a letter, I was staring into the abyss of suburban madness. My heart wasn't beating, it was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird trying to break the cage. $500. The number seemed to vibrate on the page. I looked up from the violation notice to the window. Through the frost-laced glass, across the perfectly manicured demilitarized zone that was our shared property line, I saw him. Greg. He was standing there, framed by his bay window like a portrait of smug aristocracy, holding a mug of coffee with both hands. He wasn't just looking outside, he was looking at me. And then, he took a slow sip, and the corner of his mouth twitched upward. That smirk. That absolute, soul-curdling smirk. It was the catalyst for everything that was about to burn down around him. We live in the Gables. If you've never lived in a high-end HOA, imagine a prison camp run by people who care deeply about the shade of your mulch. It's a place where individuality goes to die and be replaced by uniform beige and statutory gray. And Greg? Greg wasn't just a resident. He was the president. He was the judge, jury, and executioner of the aesthetic court. I threw the letter onto the kitchen island. It slid across the granite and hit the fruit bowl. "What is it?" my wife, Sarah, asked. She didn't look up from her tablet, but her voice had that tight edge to it. She knew. We always knew when a letter came in that specific cream-colored envelope. 500, I said, my voice sounding like gravel grinding together. He fined us $500 for the trash can. Sarah stopped scrolling. She looked at me, eyes wide. The trash can? It's Tuesday. Trash day is Tuesday. Apparently, I walked over to the fridge, needing to grab something cold just to cool down the heat flushing my neck. It was visible from the street at 7 a.m. The bylaws say it can't be out before 5 p.m. the night prior, but it has to be brought in, whatever. The issue isn't the time. The issue is placement. I grabbed the violation again and read aloud, mocking Greg's pedantic tone. Refuse container was observed protruding approximately 2 inches beyond the concealment barrier, disrupting the street-facing visual harmony. 2 inches. We had a blizzard 3 days ago. The snowbanks were waist-high. The plow guys had pushed a mountain of ice right in front of the side gate where I usually tuck the bin. I had shoved that plastic container into the snow as hard as I could, but physics is physics. Ice doesn't yield to plastic wheels. So, it stuck out. 2 inches. I'm going over there, I said. Don't, Sarah warned, standing up. You know how he gets. He loves the fight. Don't give him the satisfaction. I'm not giving him satisfaction, I zipped up my fleece, the zipper hissing like a snake. I'm giving him a piece of my mind. I marched out the front door. The air was biting, the kind of cold that freezes the inside of your nose instantly. I crunched across the driveway, ignoring the ice patches, and stomped up to Greg's front door. It was an imposing door, mahogany with brass knockers that probably cost more than my first car. I didn't use the knocker. I used my fist. Bang. 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 It took him a long time to answer. Too long. He wanted me to wait in the cold. When the door finally swung open, warmth and the smell of expensive vanilla candles spilled out. Greg stood there in a cashmere sweater that looked soft enough to sleep in. "Morning, Dan," he said. Cheerful. Too cheerful. Bit brisk out for a stroll, isn't it? Cut the crap, Greg, I held up the letter. What is this? He leaned in, squinting theatrically. Ah. Yes. The violation. Unfortunate. I hate signing those. You hate signing them? I laughed, a sharp, bitter bark. You walked by my house, saw a trash can sticking out 2 inches because of a literal act of God, snow, and decided to slap me with the maximum fine. First offense is usually a warning, Greg. Usually, Greg nodded, leaning against the doorframe, looking down at me from his elevated porch. But we're trying to crack down on repeat offenders of the visual code. And technically, since you left your garage door open for 20 minutes last July, you're not in good standing. I was unloading groceries. I shouted. A dog barked somewhere down the street. Dan, 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 he held up a hand, palm out, like he was calming a spooked horse. Look, I don't make the rules. I just enforce them. The bylaws are clear. Refuse containers must be fully concealed. Zero tolerance. If I let you slide, I have to let everyone slide. Then what? Chaos. We'd have bins lining the streets like a lesser neighborhood. It was 2 inches, I whispered, stepping closer. And there is 4 feet of snow. Zero tolerance, Greg repeated, his eyes dead flat. The rules exist to protect our property values. You agreed to them when you bought the house. Pay the fine, Dan. Or appeal it to the board. Oh wait. I am the board. He smiled. A genuine, predatory smile. Have a great day. Stay warm. He closed the door. The latch clicked with a sound of finality that echoed in my chest. I stood there for a full minute, staring at the wood grain. I could feel the heat radiating off my face, melting the snowflakes that landed on my cheeks. I wanted to kick the door in. I wanted to rip his mailbox out of the ground. But I didn't. I turned around and walked back to my house, defeated. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed my checkbook, and wrote the check. $500. I pressed the pen down so hard I tore through the paper on the signature line and had to start over. You paid it? Sarah asked quietly. I paid it, I muttered, tossing the envelope onto the counter. He wants zero tolerance. Fine. He wins. But the anger didn't go away. It festered. It sat in my gut like a stone. I spent the next 3 weeks watching him. I watched him drive his pristine Audi into his heated garage. I watched him berate the landscaping crew for missing a patch of weeds. And I watched the construction of his new fence. That was his pride and joy. He'd been talking about it for months at the community barbecues. A custom cedar privacy fence to replace the standard issue one. He'd imported the wood. He'd hired a specialist architect. It had cost him $10,000. I was standing at my kitchen sink, washing a mug, looking out at that fence. It was beautiful, I had to admit. Perfectly vertical slats, a rich, honey-colored stain, and sleek post caps. It ran the entire perimeter of his backyard. It looked substantial. Imposing. Tall. I paused, the sponge dripping soapy water onto my hand. I looked at my own fence. It was standard height. Greg's fence loomed over it just slightly. I dried my hands. I walked to the living room where we kept the house Bible, the 3-inch binder containing the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC and RS, of the Gables. What are you doing? Sarah asked. Reading, I said. I flipped past the sections on grass length and exterior paint colors. I found Section 9, Fencing and Perimeters. I scanned the legalese. Subsection B, Paragraph 4, No perimeter fence shall exceed a maximum height of 6 feet, 72 inches, from ground level to the highest point of the structure, including post caps and decorative elements. I looked out the window again. I waited until the sun went down. I slipped out the back door. The snow had mostly melted, leaving the ground muddy and soft. I wore black sweatpants and a dark hoodie, feeling ridiculous but focused. I had my heavy-duty construction tape measure clipped to my belt, but in my hand, I held the weapon of choice, a Bosch laser distance measurer. Precise to within 1/16 of an inch. I crept along my side of the property line. Greg's house was blazing with light. I could see silhouettes moving in the dining room. He was hosting a dinner party. Perfect. He was distracted. I reached the dividing line. His new fence smelled of fresh cedar and money. I crouched down at the base of one of the posts. The ground was level here, the concrete footer was flush with the dirt. I placed the laser measure on the ground, pointing the red dot straight up to the underside of the top decorative cap. Beep. I looked at the digital display. 76.2 inches. My heart skipped a beat. 76 inches is 6 feet, 4 inches. I shook my head. Maybe the ground was uneven. I moved 10 feet down the line. Beep. 75.9 inches. I moved to the corner post, the grandest one of them all. Beep. 76.5 inches. I let out a breath that formed a massive white cloud in the cold air. 72 inches was the max, including post caps and decorative elements. Greg's fence wasn't just a violation. It was a monument to non-compliance. He had built a 6-foot fence, but he'd added these decorative lattice tops and chunky post caps that pushed it way over the limit. He probably thought the rule meant the panels had to be 6 feet, or he just assumed that as president, he was exempt. Gotcha, I whispered. I didn't run back to the house. I walked. I walked with the swagger of a man holding a royal flush. I went straight to my computer. I didn't email Greg. Oh no. If I emailed Greg, he'd find a way to sweep it under the rug. He'd grant himself a variance. He'd claim grandfathering even though it was brand new. I needed the nuclear option. Our HOA is managed by a third-party company, Apex Management, to handle the finances and legalities. They are the ones who actually process the fines that the board issues. But there's a loophole. If a violation is reported directly to Apex regarding a board member, an independent review committee, comprised of presidents from neighboring HOAs, has to adjudicate it to prevent conflict of interest. I sat down and typed. To compliance@apexmanagement.com. Subject, urgent violation report, safety and bylaw noncompliance. Attached, please find photographic evidence and measurements regarding a structure at 1402, Oak Lane. The newly constructed perimeter fence exceeds the mandatory maximum height of 72 inches as stipulated in Section 9, Subsection B, Paragraph 4 of the CC and RS. Measurements indicate a height ranging from 75.9 to 76.5 inches. As this property belongs to the current HOA president, I am requesting an immediate independent review to ensure impartiality. Please note, the homeowner has previously expressed a strict zero-tolerance policy regarding bylaw violations, stating that rules exist to protect property values and exceptions lead to chaos. I trust the board will adhere to this standard. I hit send. The waiting game began. 3 days passed. The check for my $500 fine cleared the bank. Every time I saw that deduction in my mobile banking app, I smiled. It was an investment. On the 4th day, I saw the truck. It wasn't a contractor. It was a white sedan with the Apex Management logo on the door. A guy in a high-vis vest got out. He wasn't one of Greg's cronies. This was a surveyor. I watched from the blinds. Sarah came up behind me, sipping tea. Is that? Watch, I said. The surveyor set up a tripod. He had a serious, professional-grade total station. He wasn't messing around with a tape measure. He was taking official elevation readings. Greg's front door flew open. He stormed out, not in his cashmere this time, but in a suit, looking like he'd been interrupted in the middle of a conference call. I cracked the window just an inch so I could hear. Excuse me. Greg barked. What are you doing on my property? The surveyor didn't even look up from his eyepiece. Verifying a violation report, sir. Apex sent me. I am the president of the board. Greg shouted, pointing a finger at the man. I didn't authorize any survey. This is an external review, sir, the surveyor said calmly. Conflict of interest protocol. Please step back from the equipment. I saw Greg freeze. He looked around wildly. He looked at my house. I let the blinds snap shut. 2 days later, the neighborhood email blast went out. Usually, these emails are about lost cats or reminders to bring in your bins. This one had an attachment, minutes from the emergency special session. I opened it. Item 1, violation at 1402, Oak Lane. Finding, upheld. Remedy, immediate remediation of the structure to comply with the 72-inch limit. Timeline, 14 days. I printed it out. I framed it. Okay, I didn't frame it, but I wanted to. The next Saturday, I was in the driveway washing my car. It was a beautiful, crisp morning. Greg came walking over. He looked tired. His eyes were red-rimmed. He didn't have his coffee. Dan, he said. His voice was low, lacking all that booming authority from before. Greg, I said, scrubbing a wheel rim. How are you? You reported me, he said. It wasn't a question. I stood up and wiped my hands on a rag. I observed a violation. I reported it. Visual harmony, Greg. You know how it is. It's 4 inches, Dan, he hissed, stepping onto my driveway. 4 measly inches. Do you know what I have to do? I can't just cut the tops off. The posts are set in concrete. The panels are custom vertical grains. I have to rip the whole thing out. The materials alone, the labor. That sounds expensive, I said, keeping my face completely neutral. It's going to cost me another $5,000 to fix it, he pleaded, his voice cracking. Look, if you withdraw the complaint. I can't, I interrupted. It's in the hands of the independent committee now. Apex runs the show. You could write a letter, he pressed. Say you measured wrong. Say it doesn't bother you. I looked him dead in the eye. I channeled every ounce of rage I felt when I opened that $500 fine. I remembered the smirk. I remembered him sipping his coffee while I froze on his porch. I'd love to help, Greg, I said softly. Really? But the bylaws are clear. Maximum height, 6 feet. No exceptions. He flinched like I'd slapped him. If we let you slide, I continued, savoring the words, tasting them like a fine wine, we have to let everyone slide. Then what? Chaos. We can't have fences towering over the streets like a lesser neighborhood. Greg stared at me. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. He turned purple. For a second, I thought he was going to swing at me. Instead, he spun on his heel and marched back to his house. The following Tuesday, trash day, the crew arrived. It wasn't a construction crew, it was a demolition crew. Because the fence was custom, they couldn't salvage much. They had to take chainsaws to the posts. The sound of the saw biting into that expensive cedar was the sweetest music I have ever heard. I sat on my back deck, wrapped in a blanket, holding a steaming mug of coffee. I watched as the first panel crashed to the ground. Then the second. I saw Greg in his window. He wasn't smirking. He was pacing back and forth, holding a phone to his ear, frantically gesturing. At one point, he stopped and looked out at the destruction. He looked at me. I raised my coffee mug in a toast. He yanked his curtains shut. It took them 2 days to tear it all down and another week to rebuild it with shorter, uglier, standard-issue panels from Home Depot because Greg had blown his budget on the first round. The new fence looks cheap. It doesn't match his house. But it is exactly 72 inches tall. I walked over to the property line yesterday while he was inspecting the new, inferior work. "Looks great, Greg," I called out. "Much more harmonious." He didn't say a word. He just turned his back and walked inside. I still have the $500 violation notice in my drawer. I keep it next to the photo I took of his destroyed fence piled up in a dumpster. Every time I think I might be a bad person, I look at those 2 pieces of paper. I played by his rules. I used his book. I just read the fine print better than he did. So, tell me. Am I the monster here for costing a man thousands of dollars over 4 inches of wood, or did the king of the castle simply get crushed by his own drawbridge?
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.